You know what's weird is that, I was in the military. Did you serve in the military?
I did not. No.
So like in the military, you have your enlisted rank and then you have your officer ranks, right? So, in a very general sense, you have your management level and then you have your workforce, right? And that's not to dissuade anything from the officers. They do amazing work, and those guys are the tip of the spear in a lot of aspects, specifically in the Air Force where I was. But there's an understanding in the military, for the most part, I'm making a general statement here, that you have to have both sides of that, right? You have to have the officer rank, you have to have the enlisted rank. Neither one looks at the other, in a disparaging way. Why do you think there's such a negative history between security and law enforcement? I see a lot of people that are kind of new to the industry, or maybe people that are working at that low end, and they just have kind of a negative view of law enforcement. And then I do come across some law enforcement officers that seem to have a negative view of security. Why do you think there's such a negative division there historically?
I think that it comes down to every individual officer, correct? I mean, both law enforcement and the security officer, and how they build that relationship. So it's usually through contacts that perception is built between law enforcement and private security. Because as well as I do, when you do have the working level, entry level security people, we see some things that are not well trained and well represented.
Yeah.
So within our industry, we have many different levels.
Right.
I've done work for Benjamin Netanyahu's son. So there's a big difference between the person that we're going to have patrolling a parking lot, maybe, and the other security people that are involved, maybe even with the same company.
Right. Yeah, I think that people have a hard time on both sides of that equation, whether you're talking about the security guy or you're talking about the police officer. And it seems like it's mostly entry level on both sides, where they don't have, and this kind of goes with everything in life, right? You don't have a 360-degree view of things until you get a little bit more experience, whether we're talking about life or we're talking about work. And so when you're at that entry level, it's this like you're butting heads, but you're not understanding that there's such a diverse level when it comes to security, just like there's a diverse level of options when it comes to law enforcement. And I just wish more entry level officers would be understanding that they have a role. You know what I mean? It's almost like they don't feel comfortable in the role that they have. And I know in the military, like the guy that worked for the post office in the Air Force, he was just delivering mail, right? Like that guy, if you look at it from a combat standpoint, it's like, man, you're not a Navy SEAL, you're not a Green Beret, like you're not really important in the military. But then you go and ask that guy who's on a 6-month deployment to Afghanistan. Now I'm dating myself because I was in the military in the 90s, right? So like
you appreciated getting your mail, didn't you?
That's my point, right? Like that guy who's at the tip of the spear, who's in a fucking foxhole somewhere, he appreciates getting that picture of his kids in that letter. You know what I mean? So like that his role is so important. It doesn't seem as glamorous and it's not as sexy, and they don't necessarily, make movies about that. But, that guy has a responsibility, and so does the security officer.